They once ruled the silver screen, blessed with talent, adored by millions, and living lives most could only dream of. At their height, they were icons of glamour and success. But the lights of Hollywood are fickle. As the years passed and the fame faded, many of these stars were left behind. Forgotten by fans, overlooked by studios, and struggling to survive, some spent their final days in poverty. These are the tragic endings of Golden Age legends who were once celebrated and ultimately abandoned by the industry they helped build. 1. John Garfield. He was once one of Hollywood's brightest rising stars, known for his raw talent and magnetic screen presence. But in 1951, everything changed. He was summoned before the House Un-American Activities Committee during the height of the Red Scare. Although he firmly denied any involvement with communism and bravely refused to name others, that decision sealed his fate. Hollywood, eager to protect its image, began to distance itself. Studios that once competed for his talents now wanted nothing to do with him. The blacklist had taken hold, and despite his proven abilities, Garfield found himself without work. The offers vanished. A career that had seemed unstoppable was suddenly paralyzed, not by scandal, but by suspicion. As his professional life crumbled, so too did his personal stability. With no acting income, Garfield faced mounting financial strain. He was forced to cover costly legal defenses just to clear his name, all while grappling with the reality that his industry had turned its back on him. Friends noticed a profound shift. The passionate, driven performer they once knew had grown withdrawn and weary. The stress of being blacklisted, coupled with public humiliation and ongoing financial pressure, took a heavy toll on his health. The psychological burden was immense, and his physical condition deteriorated rapidly. On May 21, 1952, Garfield died of a heart attack in his New York apartment. He was just 39. While he wasn't completely penniless at the time of his death, years of forced exile and relentless stress had depleted much of the wealth he had earned. John Garfield's early death was not just a personal tragedy. It was a powerful symbol of the human cost of political paranoia. He didn't just lose his career, he lost his future, sacrificed to an era where fear overruled fairness. 2. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was once the very embodiment of Hollywood glamour. Charismatic, daring, and effortlessly charming. Known for his swashbuckling roles in classics like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood, Flynn captivated audiences around the world. But behind the heroic image was a man whose life spiraled into financial ruin, plagued by reckless spending, scandal, and addiction. Flynn lived fast and lavishly. He purchased yachts, luxury homes, designer clothes, and partied endlessly with a circle of high-living friends. His lifestyle mirrored the extravagant personas he played on screen, but it far exceeded his financial grasp. As the roles declined, the expenses continued. Flynn never developed the discipline to manage his earnings wisely, and over time, his fortune began to evaporate. His financial troubles were worsened by a series of personal and legal disasters. In 1943, he faced a scandalous trial after being accused of statutory rape, a case that dominated headlines. Though acquitted, the legal fees were staggering. The trial also tarnished his public image, leading to fewer high-profile roles and a cooling fan base. It was a turning point. Flynn's reputation never fully recovered. His personal life offered little stability. His first marriage, to actress Lily Demita, ended in 1942 with a contentious divorce that awarded her a substantial financial settlement. Flynn was also burdened by ongoing child support payments for their son Sean. Meanwhile, his second and third marriages, both stormy, added further strain to his finances and mental health. Desperate to revive his career, Flynn gambled on a passion project, a historical epic about Swiss folk hero William Tell. He hoped the film would reignite his star power and restore his wealth. But the production collapsed mid-shoot after investors pulled out, leaving Flynn not only humiliated but deeply in debt. The failure of William Tell became symbolic of his crumbling career, ambitious but unsustainable. As the big studios stopped calling, Flynn took roles in low-budget films that paled in comparison to his earlier work. His once elegant image gave way to a more weathered, erratic figure. Acting became less a craft and more a lifeline, a way to pay off debts and stay afloat. Simultaneously, his worsening alcoholism eroded both his health and reliability on set. Directors hesitated to hire him, and the offers dried up. In his final years, Flynn looked nothing like the matinee idol he had once been. Years of substance abuse left him frail and visibly aged. He continued to work sporadically, but the magic was gone. On October 14, 1959, Errol Flynn died of a heart attack in Vancouver. He was just 50 years old. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at only $10,000, a stunningly low figure for a man who had once been one of the highest-paid actors in the world. Flynn's story is a tragic cautionary tale, a golden career undone by excess, misfortune, and mismanagement. Though his legacy lives on in film history, his final chapter was far from glamorous. He died broke, broken, and largely forgotten by the industry he once helped define. 3. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney's extraordinary career spanned over 9 decades, making him one of the most prolific actors in Hollywood history. As a child star in the 1930s and 40s, he was a box office sensation, headlining the Andy Hardy films and starring in hits like Boys Town. At the peak of his fame under MGM, he was among the highest-paid actors in the world, but success didn't translate into long-term stability. Rooney's fortune was steadily eroded by lavish spending and a tumultuous personal life. He married 8 times, with each divorce chipping away at his finances. In his later years, tragedy struck again when he became a victim of elder abuse. In 2011, he bravely testified before Congress about being financially exploited by a family member who had allegedly emptied his accounts and left him nearly penniless. When Rooney died in 2014 at age 93, he had reportedly just $18,000 to his name. Despite appearing in over 300 films, his estate became the subject of bitter disputes between his surviving relatives. For men who brought so much joy to the screen, Rooney's final years were marked by betrayal, legal strife, and financial ruin, a sobering end to a once glittering legacy. 4. Terry Thomas. Terry Thomas, the iconic British actor best known for his impeccable comic timing, gap-toothed grin, and upper-class cad persona, brought laughter to millions throughout the 1950s and 60s in films like School for Scoundrels and Those Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines. But behind his polished charm lay a heartbreaking final chapter, marked by illness, financial hardship, and quiet decline. In 1971, Terry Thomas was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurological condition that slowly eroded the physical control and vibrant expressiveness that defined his performances. The illness was devastating, not just personally, but professionally. As the disease advanced, he found it increasingly difficult to work. By the late 1970s, his once thriving career had effectively ended, cutting off his main source of income. The costs of managing Parkinson's were staggering. His medical expenses reportedly reached £40,000 per year, equivalent to over £100,000 today, including medication, specialist treatments, and full-time care. With limited residual income and no new roles coming in, Terry Thomas was forced to sell his beloved home in Godalming, Surrey, along with many of his personal possessions. These included items of deep sentimental value, adding emotional weight to his already dire financial situation. By the 1980s, he was living in near obscurity, far from the limelight he once commanded. His elegant suits and signature cigarette holder were replaced by quiet days in modest conditions. The man who once epitomized a certain brand of British sophistication now relied on support from others just to get by. In 1989, his plight became public, prompting friends and fellow entertainers to step in. A benefit concert was held in his honor, raising £75,000, enough to fund proper care and ensure some dignity in his final months. Though his body had weakened, those close to him said his wit and warmth never left him. Terry Thomas died on January 8, 1990, at the age of 78, after nearly 20 years battling Parkinson's. He left behind a legacy of joy, but very little financial security. His story stands as a sobering reminder that even beloved stars can fall through the cracks when the spotlight fades. 5. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth, often called the Love Goddess, was one of the most iconic faces of 1940s Hollywood. With her dazzling auburn hair, sultry voice, and unforgettable performances in films like Gilda and CoverGirl, she captivated audiences worldwide. Her famous pinup photo became the second most requested image among American GIs during World War II, cementing her status as a symbol of beauty and allure. Born Margarita Carmen Cancino in 1918, she began performing as a young dancer under her father's guidance. When Columbia Pictures discovered her, they set out to transform her completely. To fit the studio's vision of a leading lady, she underwent painful electrolysis to raise her hairline, had her naturally dark hair dyed red, and changed her name to mask her Spanish heritage. Hollywood's desire to create a more marketable American image came at the cost of erasing her true identity, an all-too-common practice at the time. Despite her on-screen success and marriage to Prince Ali Khan, her personal life was filled with turmoil. Behind the glamorous facade was a woman facing profound struggles. In her 50s, Rita began experiencing memory lapses, confusion, and dramatic mood shifts. Colleagues misread these symptoms as signs of age or instability. In reality, Rita was developing early-onset Alzheimer's disease, long before the condition was widely understood or publicly discussed. By 1980, her condition had deteriorated to the point where a court appointed her daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan, as her legal guardian. The disease not only affected her mind, but also drained her finances. Mounting medical expenses and earlier mismanagement of her wealth left her with far less security than her legacy deserved. Yasmin fought tirelessly to ensure her mother received dignified care in her final years. Rita Hayworth died in 1987 at the age of 68. Her decline and the industry's reaction to it revealed how little compassion or understanding existed for neurodegenerative diseases at the time. Her case helped raise awareness and inspired greater advocacy for Alzheimer's research. As Rita once said, "Every man I've known has fallen in love with Gilda and awakened with me." A poignant reminder of the painful distance between public fantasy and private reality. 6. Dana Plato. Dana Plato rose to fame as Kimberly Drummond on Different Strokes, becoming one of the most recognizable young stars on American television in the late 1970s and early 80s. But once the show ended, her career faltered. Struggling to transition into adult roles, she found herself locked out of Hollywood, with offers drying up and bills piling high. To stay afloat, Plato took roles in low-budget films, posed for adult magazines, and even worked at a dry cleaning shop. Her personal battles, particularly with substance abuse, only made matters worse, damaging her reputation and draining her finances. In 1991, she made headlines for robbing a video store, a desperate act that underscored how far she'd fallen. Legal troubles and court-mandated rehab programs added further financial strain. Though she made several comeback attempts, none brought lasting success. In 1999, Dana Plato died from an overdose at just 34. Her story remains a heartbreaking example of the harsh reality many child stars face once the spotlight fades. 7. Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday, known as Lady Day, was a groundbreaking jazz singer whose voice defined a generation. Rising to fame in the 1930s and 40s, she captivated audiences with emotional depth and haunting performances of songs like Strange Fruit and God Bless the Child. At the peak of her fame, she performed in elite venues and commanded high fees, becoming one of the most influential artists of her time. Yet, despite her acclaim, Holiday's life was marked by deep personal struggles. Her heroin addiction and alcoholism consumed much of her income. Exploitative managers and manipulative partners also took advantage of her finances, leaving her vulnerable. After a drug conviction, she lost her New York cabaret card, barring her from performing in clubs that served alcohol, severely limiting her income opportunities. As her health deteriorated, Holiday discovered that royalties from her recordings were minimal, and many of her classic tracks were no longer in circulation. In May 1959, she was arrested on her deathbed for drug possession and spent her final days under police guard. Billie Holiday died at just 44 with only 70 cents in her bank account. A tragic end for a woman whose talent reshaped American music. 8. Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton, the stone-faced genius of silent cinema, experienced not only artistic triumph but also deep personal and financial hardship. Though he had once enjoyed immense success as both a performer and director during the 1920s, the arrival of the Great Depression in the 1930s dealt a significant blow to his finances. Like many in the entertainment industry, Keaton saw much of his wealth vanish during this turbulent period. Adding to his difficulties was a costly 1932 divorce from his first wife, Natalie Talmadge. The settlement left him with heavy financial obligations and distanced him from his two sons. At the same time, Keaton battled alcoholism, a struggle that damaged both his health and professional relationships. His drinking, fueled by mounting frustrations and the loss of creative control, led to erratic behavior that alarmed studios and colleagues alike. By the mid-1930s, Keaton's career had reached a low point. Once a trailblazer with full autonomy over his films, he was reduced to working as an uncredited gag writer for MGM. The artistic freedom he once thrived on was gone, and the man who had redefined cinematic comedy now labored behind the scenes in obscurity. Yet Keaton was nothing if not resilient. After receiving treatment for his addiction and marrying Eleanor Norris in 1940, his life regained some balance. Eleanor's unwavering support helped stabilize his personal life, and together, they navigated the challenges of a changed Hollywood landscape. In the 1950s, Keaton experienced a quiet revival. Television provided a new platform for his talents, introducing his unique brand of physical comedy to younger audiences. He made memorable appearances in commercials, variety shows, and guest roles. Supporting parts in films like Sunset Boulevard, 1950, and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, 1966, proved his talent remained intact. Even if the spotlight had dimmed, Keaton never returned to the towering fame of his silent film days, but he continued to work steadily and lived modestly. Though his estate wasn't large at the time of his death, he was not impoverished, just far removed from the opulence his legacy suggested. Buster Keaton passed away from lung cancer on February 1, 1966, at age 70. His final years were marked by dignity, creative engagement, and a growing appreciation for his pioneering work. Today, Keaton's influence is seen in the very foundation of modern filmmaking. His daring, innovation, and perfectly timed gags remain immortal. 9. Bobby Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll's fall from grace is one of Hollywood's most tragic stories. In the 1940s and early 50s, he was Walt Disney's golden boy, charming audiences in Song of the South, Treasure Island, and as the voice of Peter Pan. Earning up to $1,750 a week, he was one of the most successful child actors of his time, but fame proved fleeting. As he grew older, Driscoll struggled to transition into adult roles. His boyish charm faded, and the studios lost interest. Rejection led to disillusionment, and he soon turned to drugs. By his early 20s, he had served time for narcotics possession, and the industry that once celebrated him now turned its back. Attempts to revive his career went nowhere. Roles dried up, and whatever money he had left was consumed by legal troubles and failed rehab stints. Eventually, Driscoll fled to New York, clinging to hopes of a stage comeback, but it never came. In 1968, his body was found in an abandoned East Village tenement. He was buried in a pauper's grave, unidentified until months later through fingerprints. Bobby Driscoll died alone at just 31, a heartbreaking symbol of the cost of early fame and a system that failed to protect him. 10. Marie Prevost. Marie Prevost rose to fame in the 1920s as one of Hollywood's most beloved comedic actresses. With radiant charm and impeccable timing, she starred in silent film hits like The Marriage Circle, 1924, and Kiss Me Again, 1925. Her popularity soared, and for a time she was among the most in-demand leading ladies in the industry. But as the silent era faded and the age of talkies began, Prevost's career took a devastating turn. Unlike some of her contemporaries, Prevost struggled with the transition to sound films. Her voice was considered unsuitable for the new medium, and casting offers became increasingly rare. Compounding the issue was a wave of fresh talent entering Hollywood, eager to take center stage. The studios, always chasing the next sensation, quickly moved on, leaving many silent film veterans like Prevost behind. As the roles disappeared, Prevost faced not just professional rejection, but deep personal despair. The actress who once lit up the screen now found herself alone and forgotten. The emotional toll of fading stardom led her to alcohol, which gradually consumed her. Her health began to decline, and so did her financial security. Once wealthy, she was unprepared for the industry's abrupt abandonment. Without steady work, her savings evaporated. By the mid-1930s, Prevost was living in near poverty. Isolated and physically frail, she struggled to afford food and basic living expenses. Reports suggest that severe malnutrition contributed to her worsening health. Her glamorous past seemed like a distant memory. On January 21, 1937, Marie Prevost was found dead in her modest Los Angeles apartment. She was only 38. The official cause of death was acute alcoholism and malnutrition. At the time of her passing, she reportedly had just $300 to her name. Marie Prevost's tragic downfall is a stark reminder of how quickly fame can fade and how little protection stardom offers once the spotlight moves on. Her story remains one of the most haunting examples of silent Hollywood's forgotten faces. 11. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake captivated audiences in the 1940s with her signature peekaboo hairstyle and sultry performances in film noir classics like This Gun for Hire and The Blue Dahlia. But behind her Hollywood glamour was a deeply troubled personal life that grew increasingly chaotic as the years passed. Lake struggled with mental health issues, later suspected to be schizophrenia, which made it difficult for her to maintain both personal relationships and consistent work. During her peak years, she also developed a serious dependency on alcohol. Her drinking led to unpredictable behavior, damaged her reputation, and made her difficult to cast, contributing to the rapid decline of a once promising career. Her financial troubles were equally devastating. 4 marriages, including those to director André de Toth and composer Joseph A. McCarthy, ended in divorce, often leaving her with mounting legal bills and little financial support. Despite her past earnings, Lake lived beyond her means during her Hollywood heyday and was unprepared for the financial fallout. By 1951, she had filed for bankruptcy, and her once thriving film career had evaporated. In the 1960s, her situation grew even more dire. To survive, Lake took a job as a waitress and bartender in a New York City hotel. She reportedly kept her identity hidden, though some patrons recognized the faded star behind the bar. It was a sobering reminder of how far and how fast Hollywood stars could fall, especially in an era without a safety net for those no longer in demand. Despite these struggles, Lake attempted a brief comeback. In 1969, she published her autobiography, Veronica, the autobiography of Veronica Lake, offering a candid and often painful account of her rise and fall. While the book stirred some media interest, it failed to revive her career or significantly improve her circumstances. Years of alcoholism had ravaged her health. She developed cirrhosis of the liver, hepatitis, and acute kidney damage. In her final years, she lived modestly, with only a small bank account and few possessions. Veronica Lake died in 1973 at just 50 years old in a Vermont hospital, alone and far removed from the Hollywood spotlight she once commanded. 12. Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman rose to stardom as Arnold Jackson on Different Strokes, becoming one of the most beloved child actors of the late 1970s and early 80s. Despite being born with a congenital kidney condition that affected his growth, his charisma and comedic timing earned him a salary on par with top adult stars, along with lucrative endorsements and widespread fame. Yet behind the scenes, his finances were crumbling. Much of his income was mishandled by his adoptive parents and advisors, prompting Coleman to sue them for mismanagement and win a $1.3 million judgment. Still, the damage was done. As roles dried up in adulthood and medical expenses mounted, he struggled to make ends meet. By the late 1990s, he had filed for bankruptcy, surviving on small appearances and reality TV cameos. His later years were marred by public altercations, health issues, and growing isolation. When Coleman died in 2010 at the age of 42, little remained of the fortune he'd once earned. His life stands as a cautionary tale of how early fame, without protection or guidance, can quickly unravel. If you enjoyed this glimpse into Hollywood's golden age, don't forget to like, subscribe, and step into the next story. There's always more behind the curtain.